Hey guys, welcome to the second episode of the Jn'L Podcast, and today it will be the first episode of
the Debrief, which is where we're just going to talk about things that are happening in the world and our personal lives. Just have a chat with you guys, basically.
Yeah. So today, I've been thinking quite randomly about prison reform, and especially in the US compared to like some of the ways it's done much better, I think, in Europe. And Louise wants to speak about.
I was going to speak about colonialism because I recently just did a really interesting essay about the Congo and the effects of colonialism today, so it's pretty interesting. Also, now that you talk about prison reform, I'm about to do a module on US prisons, so maybe
Yeah, well, definitely.
with the insight that you give to me into that module, if it goes ahead.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of it just started from like a random conversation, like just the evening with like Sweeto and like Alex, and just chatting basically. But then we looked into it to like fuel what we were talking about, and today I looked at some videos and like some stats and stuff, and yeah, there's a lot there. But yeah, you can go ahead and start, and you can tell us all a bit about the Congo.
So, oh my gosh, it feels weird talking about it because I always talk about it, but not. Yeah. Anyway, basically, the Congo has been colonized. It was colonized in, I think, 1885 or something, by Belgium, and I'm gonna say dictator because he basically was a dictator of the Congo. The king just absolutely plundered the whole of the Congo, exploited their resources, had slaves like producing rubber and gold and all the like precious minerals that they had. And like you can see some of the, even though the Congo got independence in 1960, the president, who was a bit of a socialist but like a really good president who was basically going to save the Congo, cheekily got assassinated. As you do by Western forces. They all banded together to assassinate the socialist leader. Classic. And then ever since then, it's just been led by people who are exactly like the colonial leaders, like just exploiting all the citizens. And so I saw this. It was this tweet. No, it wasn't a tweet. It was trending on Instagram. It was like hashtag blood in the Congo, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. What's that?
I think I remember that.
Yeah. And so I looked it up, and then I just saw that there's like mines in the Congo that are really dangerous for the workers, and the workers aren't getting paid, and they're run by like armed groups, and it's specifically with the minerals like coltan and cobalt, which are minerals that are turned into tantalum, which can be put in like processed into like digital like things like iPhones, stations.
Question. So I weirdly kind of did a similar project to this when I was doing engineering and like material science stuff. So it was about like you're saying, like stuff in electronics and cars and phones and things like this. Is this in any way tied into like currently, not like in the original times when the mining started there? Is this now tied in more like China's involvement in Africa? Because I think so that was more about like stockpiling like rare earths and things like that. I know like Russia has some, and I know like but basically China's like buying them from other places where they actually can be mined, like in Africa. And obviously there's a lot of controversy now with like China's growing influence in Africa. So like, is there a link there now?
Yeah, there is a link, but I only touched on it because it's not as you never really know what China's up to. Like there's not enough literature or anything about it, but it's still
true.
American companies like Apple, like they're still sourcing the mineral from places like the Congo, which is been called a conflict mineral in UN papers. There was an act called the Dodd-Frank Act to try and like limit the use of it, but it's just not worked. Like, if you know you're sourcing a product from somewhere, you should be wary of where you're sourcing it from, and two, like how.
So what would be your solution then? Because like, so you could argue two sides, right? So it's kind of like just general poor labor. So for example, everyone knows the sweatshop situation and with companies associated with like Nike and all that sort of stuff. But you can argue two sides. You can argue like they've been like strong armed into these positions and then made worse by like the powers that be of the countries to have these jobs so that people get another choice, and then all the conditions that go with that. But you can also say like it is a job, and if they didn't have the job, then they might otherwise be starving.
So
like, how would you bridge that gap between like reforming it without necessarily like removing all the gainful employment of everyone that's currently involved.
Yeah, it's really difficult. Well, for starters, like, it's really hard because you say like you want like people like the UN peacekeepers to come in and help, but they usually ruin stuff.
Yeah.
So just having more communication with the people they're buying it from, like, not because there are mines that aren't run by armed groups, they're run by like the local people, and so they should try to like, and also stop fund that those groups used to be funded by the UN, like the Rwanda, because obviously after the Rwandan genocide they were like, oh my god, okay, let's make up for the Rwandan genocide by funding groups in Rwanda, and then Rwanda just went into the Congo, and it's all just one big giant mess. And just acknowledge, because there's not enough acknowledgement of what's going on. Do you get what I mean?
Okay, so it's not quite a sense of like with the blood diamond situation, it's not quite a sense of like, don't buy it because obviously it's not going to happen, like the demand is there. It's more of like, instead of turning a blind eye to the fact that you know that you're funding militia groups to control it, like say, like set regulations basically, like we'll only trade with you in the exact same way that we're already trading, but you have to set up regulations and policies and work stuff. Okay, what if like, problem is you could argue like transitioning to like what we'd say is the bare minimum of like working conditions, pay, all these things in this country, let's say over there, might like, I don't know, double the price of certain exchanges and
or
stuff like that.
even like if you want to source coltan, right, from the Congo, you could set up like an American, British, Chinese company could go and set up in the Congo and a direct link to the miners, pay them. Do you get what I mean?
So this is what I think China are going to do, because they're much more willing to actually like get their hands dirty, not in a like a violent way, but like in terms of they actually go into the countries and they oversee the infrastructure.
Exactly. It's kind of like some foreign force that's like can kind of be blind to what's going on, but you can't be blind if you can literally see it.
Yeah.
So I think that's,
and obviously,
the solution.
And their own governments could have more responsibility and say like, no, we've got these resources. Ultimately, there is the demand that we can put our people first and slowly build up that way. So I guess it is a complicated one for sure. Like I say, with like whether it's sweatshops for clothes, whether it's like blood diamonds, it's like these things are quite hard to shift without screwing someone over. But yeah, no, it is really interesting. It is really interesting. So like, okay, this kind of goes back to a conversation we had the other day, I guess. Like, could you argue whether it's like country by country or like as a whole, argue the point that like, if certain countries had never been, what's the word, colonialized, I guess, would they necessarily be in a better position, let's say, better position today than what's transpired, which is that they were undone. So my thing is like, and obviously I'll let you, like, because you're the expert on this, like, say what you think. But my thing is like, I think number one depends on metrics, because like, so I'm sure, you know, child mortality, I always go to like that's decreased significantly in the similar kind of trends as you'd hope, and like things like to say that generally these countries are doing better, I think because of some of their relationships with their colonializers or whatever you want to call them. But obviously things like the natural resources they have now, they're getting the shit end of the stick in terms of trade. So, but would they've even had the ability to mine it and trade it and things like this without some of those routes before? That's my thinking, but obviously you know more about like the actual information. So what do you think?
Sorry, my head hurts. I'm still over. Sorry,
just breathe. Have a coffee break.
What was I going to say? Oh yeah, but the thing is, they could have done all that stuff. They could have gone in and built up infrastructure and done all these things to help at a reasonable like price, or done it rather than literally every government went in and exploited them. It wasn't just, oh, we found these sources, these are people who are equal to us, let's do you know what I mean?
So what would be, other than the humanitarian point of like, as you say, people equal to us, we have to first and foremost treat them like people. What would be like the actual incentive, like person to person or like country to country, for them to actually do that? So, for example, in this country, if you don't treat people well, they just won't do the job. No one will do the job, and no one will get done. But obviously, that's obviously because we've got systems and laws and policies. But to go into a country when those things don't exist and you can exploit them, like, what do you think would have been a better?
Exploit them? Not what's the incentive not to exploit them?
Yeah, other than the humanitarian thing, if anything.
Just being a good, decent human being.
No, obviously, I agree. But I just mean say like to stop like things like having this in the future and things like that. What lessons can we take away from it to be like, you did that, and now look what's happened?
Well, to be fair, you have a lot of people in the countries that we live in now who are complaining against it. Like, for example, the hashtag, who want to make it more known, who are just, so if you get your own people arguing against you, fighting against you, then that's, I guess, another incentive.
It could be. You know what, like, kind of a random comparison I draw it to is like, for example, in psychology, right? And I feel like I can't get away from the Nazis here, but it's also sort of in medicine. Like, for example, if you take psychology, there's so many awful experiments and stuff like that done on people that massively progressed, though, like understanding that the human psyche and biology to do with that, X, Y, and Z. And obviously you've got the Nazis that did, again, awful experiments on human beings, again, to like, but that completely informed loads of our medicine today, and again, to some degree overlapping with like psychology and studies and sociology and stuff like that. So like, obviously those things massively kind of like furthered certain fields. However, they're nowhere near possible today, and like those things now are like really hard to get, even kind of compare results on, because obviously there's so many ethical implications for like lots of things to do with that kind of stuff. So I mean, you could argue that obviously no one would argue that those were the right ways to do things, or that was good or nice or humanitarian, but you could argue like the net outcome, you can argue some like net positives. So if you take that same principle and apply it to like colonialism, could you say like where some of these African countries are now, or just general countries in the Commonwealth, obviously they're at a delay because they were like put at the bottom of the pile, but if you say like they were stepped on to get up, and then now a rope has been thrown down for them to very slowly come up to where we are, would you see it like that? Would you say no? For example, you take Egypt, was a very sophisticated civilization at the same time as all the other countries. They would have naturally, because they have intelligent people, because of resources, they would have got there on their own if it wasn't for this like exploitation.
I completely understand that point, and to some degree I agree with it. But you've got to understand that maybe those countries didn't want to end up like another capitalist Western state. Maybe they wanted to have, do you know what I mean? Like maybe they wanted to stay in their tribes, and that's not a bad way to live at all. That's
I guess
way to live. Like,
okay, so what would you say? Okay, so I think a lot of people are quite polarized.
Would be backwards. Maybe that.
I'm going to put a question to you in terms of like, okay, so you just mentioned capitalism, right? And obviously the other extreme thing people think of is like Marxism. What would you say then is like neither of the extremes, but is something that they could? So I get what you're saying in terms of like culturally, you know, for example, Western standards of like beauty and clothes and X, Y, and Z. But like in terms of like how the economy works, how they trade between nations, blah blah blah, how they order themselves. Not being Marxist and not being capitalist, what could they have done that would be different to what was imposed on them that you still think would have borne the same fruit?
Well, whilst all the countries were getting independence, you had leaders like, well, actually Gaddafi was a bit later, but you had like Gaddafi, Lubumba, boy got killed, Nkrumah, lots of leaders in Africa who had, you had the what's it called? Oh my god, I completely forgot it. It's like United Africa or African Union.
Yeah,
exactly. So you had all these countries who wanted to have a united Africa, who wanted to be able to, and you get what I mean, because they had that sort of sense commonality with being African, the trade, the way they communicated, the relationship between each country would have been much more fair, because when you have a Western non-Western relationship, it is based on an underlying theme of race, or like these people are different to us, so we won't treat them the same.
Okay, so it seems to me like what you're saying, because I definitely agree that would have been a better thing if they'd united. So, for example, I think I saw something where ACOM was like pushing that and campaigning for that, funding initiatives to get group African leaders to speak and stuff like that. I definitely think that's the biggest thing they've missed out on. But it sounds to me more like it doesn't necessarily mean they were, what's the word, have some of the same colonial.
But all these leaders were not capitalist leaders; they were all socialist leaders.
Or like essentially they would be still running away where like
capitalism fundamentally is not based on sharing, whereas socialism is based on sharing between everyone. Do you get what I mean? And so, although each country would have had these relationships like trade, which is capitalist, in their own countries, the profits that they got back would have been shared throughout.
Right. Okay. So, kind of like I don't know if these terms apply like outside of one sovereign place, but like so kind of a capitalist approach in trade, looking after their own benefits and their own rights and making sure that they get the best deal, but socially spreading that across the country. Would you say there's a good example of a country that has successfully done that?
Well, like a successful socialist country?
Yeah. I guess you could argue like, and this might segue us onto something that you wanted to mention. China's, okay, it's not quite like that. However, they definitely try and get the best deal for themselves as a country. And you could argue that, I mean, they, in an imperfect way, you could argue they try and to some degree like spread that across their citizens. So maybe they're the closest.
When I can only think of like old initiatives by like old governments.
Yeah.
Egypt, they had systems in place that would like share wealth. It's just, I think it worked, and then no one ever gave it a chance to work because Western countries were like, nope.
Do you not think that that's kind of what capitalism does in a sense of like, so let's say where we're at now and where lots of like Nordic countries are. Say again?
Yeah, the Cold War, which was literally based on eradicating communism, which was a fight against the USSR at the beginning. But then it ended up being, no, we don't want any form of socialism because it can turn into whatever they in their heads it could turn into. Do you get what I mean? So that crushed everything, especially Latin America.
Yeah, that's to some degree what I'm going to go at. So like, if you take the USSR's approach as like trying to rush to communism, so basically doing the opposite of what you just said, and like not have anything that's capitalistic and rush to communism, and the effect that like, the bad ways happen. So I'm saying like, would you not, if you look at like UK with the benefit system and like some Nordic countries that like, yes, in the European sense they're capitalistic, but then now it kind of eventually got to a place now where like there's enough good systems in place that we can make so much money in such a big economy that we can now help everybody.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, I think
third wave form of capitalism, like whatever you want to call it, where it's getting more, because I'm not saying that capitalism can't exist, it just has to exist in a way that is still beneficial to the layman person.
So if we then take that back to like Africa, then maybe you could say in the same way that I don't think, and you can talk about in terms of like racial groups, but obviously like I wouldn't say Britain has done that internally and completely screwed over its poor. Like obviously it's to some degree. You can't say the poor people of the UK are equivalent to Africa, but like but could you not say like as a country then, or as countries, or as an Africa as a continent or whatever, they got screwed over so that all these advances can be made really quickly, so that now we're able to the luxury of being humanitarian as a globe, as UN, as all these things, and now we can pump money back into them to bring them up to speed. It's like to get where we needed to go, we needed to cut all these corners, and now we can like give aid and X, Y, and Z. Or do you think ultimately that like that's not going to work because it's just going to be this like savior thing, and African countries are never going to organize themselves and they're going to be dependent on us?
The leaders that were there at the time of the revolution, they needed to stay. They absolutely needed to stay. Yeah.
There's more of a sense of identity, do you think?
Yeah, we don't know what the world would have been like if all those leaders were able to thrive.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, South Africa was still bad, but as soon as Nelson Mandela was president,
Yeah.
and got better.
So, but do you think that's more? Do you think that's more because that sense of identity, like we've got one of our own preaching these things? It's more like we feel more like, so for example, there's a situation, like there's something to say in, like, for example, countries like Jamaica, that apparently they kind of have, if you speak to people that are from Jamaica, sometimes they have an attitude, especially the older generation, that's more like mentally still kind of sees themselves as a class below the British, even though that they've been not occupied, I guess, by the British for so much longer, but they have like a mental kind of thing because they never really govern themselves. Do you think that's like maybe what it is, like the fact that Mandela was one of them with his own politics, and so it's like whatever he did that bore fruit, they would say like, oh, this is our thing, not like something that was given to us, and that kind of gives everybody like a sense of we can do this, we can. Do you think maybe it's more like mental?
Yeah, I think it's mental, and I think like, I don't know, leaders that care will usually do better for their country.
Okay, so but if you're from that country, you're more likely to like care about people.
But then you have, like, there's loads of African leaders now who are obviously born and bred in that country, but because of their ties to capitalism, so the form of capitalism that is exploitative, right, they are not caring about their own citizens, but because of the like opposition's ties to sort of socialists, just the idea of having a commonality between everyone, just the ideas that they had, it didn't have to be policies, it was the, like, do you get what I mean? It was it's based on the ideas rather than
no, I think like we underestimate sometimes like the power of like political philosophy and identity and all these things that are social and just seem like wishy-washy stuff, because that's what really like makes change rather than like small policies.
Exactly.
It's like, so I think no, definitely. Okay, so should we then now look into what I was going to say about prison reform? Okay, so let's talk about prison reform. So basically what it was, I think we were just watching, like, have you seen The Fall on Netflix?
No.
Okay, it's basically like it's a show about a serial killer, but I think it would maybe something to do with that got us speaking. But we just started speaking, and I was basically thinking, like, so obviously with crime and punishment, the idea, I think, it kind of comes down to rehabilitation, separation of dangerous members of society from society, in order to protect them, and then maybe like deterrent, because obviously punishment suggests that, you know, consequences and can deter people from doing those crimes. So like that, I think those are like broadly the ideas of like different systems of like crime punishment and justice systems and stuff like that, as I said. But for me, I'm basically arguing like this is kind of starting off not really looking into like how any one prison system works particularly, but I was just basically thinking like situations where you've got people who commit a crime and they go to prison for life, right? And let's say they go for prison, life means like they end up for 50 years, and they have obviously 3 square meals, but they're locked up in their cells, and sometimes become worse criminals inside there, commit more crimes, X, Y, and Z. It's like, I really don't understand that, because like if you deem them if you deem that they must be in there for life and they never get probation, X, Y, and Z, and that means you don't think they're you're able to rehabilitate them, so that thing goes out the window. Then if you think that what's it called, and then I also don't think the stats are there to say rehabilitation, deterrence really works, because people do the whole spectrum of crimes, and I don't think it really works too much. Don't get me wrong, like obviously if you had some sort of what's that thing with the sirens, the movie, what's it called?
Oh, The Purge.
Purge, yeah. Feel like a Purge type situation. Obviously, I'm not saying like moral people would all still be moral, and like whereas legal is like clear signs of morality. I'm sure like people do not do things because it's law, but by and large, I think like levels of deterrent don't really make a difference. So for me, all that's there for it is like it's punishment for punishment's sake. And like my problem with that is like we kind of spoke about like serious examples. Like if someone, for example, did something to my child, I'd obviously be in that state of like, I want them to suffer X, Y, and Z. But I don't think we should live, like justice eye for an eye. A lot of that comes into like informs like the thinking about the death penalty in America, things like that. But like, I appreciate why an individual may feel like that, or a group of individuals, or whatever. However, I don't think we should live in a state where, like, it wastes, even pragmatically speaking, taxpayers' money toward a cause that's only for suffering.
Yeah.
Like, regardless of what you think, like, it doesn't make any sense, like, to just have someone there. Like, you say that you value human life, so you may for not have a death penalty, for example, but you're also paying for someone literally just to, like, survive in 4 walls for 50 years. It's dumb. So, like, this kind of, like, sparks off a whole conversation, and, like, we spoke about, like, what if they did this because you really want them to be rehabilitated. And I was saying, like, I believe that everyone can be rehabilitated, but I respect the fact that that process isn't, number one, guaranteed. Number two, may not be worth the resources for that particular person, right? So we kind of looked into it in deep dive, and so basically, it became a thing of, like, comparing America versus, like, European countries. So America, like, I looked up some things earlier. So, like, in California, they have more prisoners than college students. It also costs 50 grand a year to keep somebody in prison a year, which is similar to their crazy, like, student fees and living costs and stuff like that.
Blimey.
And it's just absolutely nuts. And then when you compare it to, like, European prisons, so I looked at some videos, like, more extreme examples of, like, in Finland. Was it Finland? Basically some of the Nordic countries, and, like, even us, like, what I was saying, my model that I'd replace it with, I was saying, was basically you have the rehabilitate. You have a court case, and you say, like, this person could be rehabilitated. Let's say they are there for drugs, or let's say they're there because they stole, because they weren't qualified to have a job, X, Y, and Z reason. Let's say they were there for aggression. So you say, like, oh, this person's in drugs, they've got to go to rehab. This person's there because they've got anger problems, they've got to have counselling, X, Y, and Z. And, like, that's the system. You have to go through the system. Let's say, like, you go through the system once, you're let back out. If you pass the system, but in that system, like, you get qualifications, you train in a trade, you get, like, professional help with whatever your issues were, so you can get back out in the system. So now you're rehabilitated, and cool. Or you have, and then the people that you think are, like, death row worthy, or, like, unsavable, they go into a system where, like, they work for their own stuff, so that it's not taxpayers' money. Like, they have jobs, like in private prisons in America, but that money then goes to, like, self-maintaining them. That way, it's, like, not just people there for suffering. They've got a purpose. They're not wasting taxpayers' money. Yeah, so that's what I thought. And apparently, like, in the UK, we're quite similar to that. Actually, like, there's different prisons where there are schemes. I think so. Alex looked this up for me, and it was, like, one of the things they do is there's even open prisons where you, like, go out during the day, you work, whatever it is, and then you come to prison at night. And then in places like Finland and stuff like that, they've got even crazy version of that. Like, there was a guy in had a sentence of life for murder, but he's, like, a tech consultant or something like that, and he goes out during the day and he comes back at night. And apparently the statistics, like, 0.3% of people either don't come back or commit a crime. That people are allowed to go out in this system. And they got smaller systems, and they have, like, they cook their own food, they learn trade, like I say, they have bathroom, single cell, and all of this sounds like luxuries. And people are like, oh, why should a murderer get luxuries?
That's what people always say about the prison argument. Well, they get TVs or something.
Yeah, exactly. But if you treat them like animals, they're only going to be animals when they get out.
Agreed.
So you've got to treat them to, like, learn that they're a person, they have value, like, that they can have value outside of being a criminal, like, they learn how to cook for themselves, X, Y, and Z. And I feel like, yeah, that's my whole thing. So, like, for you, what do you think are some of the contentious points in, like, doing that, where you have things where it's just about rehabilitation, or you have these, like, self-sustaining systems where I also think, let me give you something controversial to maybe tackle. I also think that, let's say they're in there for life and they don't want to work for themselves. You say, what do you do then? I actually think they should get the option of euthanasia.
Agreed.
Means that
I was thinking that, actually. I think we have really similar thoughts. I think the death penalty is absolutely disgusting. It should be abolished everywhere. But if someone wants to die, then give them the opportunity to.
Yeah, because it's like, if they can no longer be useful to society in your eyes, there's no point making them live. Like, obviously you can kill yourself, but, like, I don't think we want to live in a situation where it's like, oh, okay, that's our solution. They can just hang themselves, or they can just get stabbed or something. No, like, if you think they're not fit for the world ever again, and they don't want to contribute to a subsystem that helps people, then yeah, they should be able to have euthanasia. You know,
no one's taking anyone's lives. It's maybe they should teach them how to self-administer it, so it's not like anyone's doing the act.
Okay, how do you feel about a murderer being able to just like be on the tube with you before he goes back to his prison.
Well, I don't. The whole point is that that's a bit mental, because like, what if he just murders someone? That's not being in prison at all. If you are allowed out.
So like my thing about that is, okay, I wouldn't maybe necessarily think as far as.
Does he have a
Again,
gun?
these are
He's just
proof
chilling.
concept.
He can just run away. Then he can just escape.
But they're saying that the statistics are very, very low for people doing that. And what I imagine the reason for that is like if you lock someone up in an American prison, or maybe some of the more serious prisons here, you don't give them any weapons, you tell them they're dangerous, you put them with other hardened criminals, they get worse, blah 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 blah, and then you let them out, or they escaped or whatever. I think all they can see themselves as, maybe they're like, one, conditioned to being in that environment, so to commit other crimes, go back, or two, they don't know any better. However, if you tell somebody like, why would you commit another crime if you've got a good job going, you're up for parole, you're enjoying your rehabilitation, X, Y, and Z is happening to you? Why would you commit a crime or run away? Because doing that now means those privileges maybe be revoked, and maybe you'll go to a different section, or you're screwed for life.
I think it depends how dangerous they are. If like they're basically like a dangerous killer, maybe put them in prison for a bit and then like eke them out into the system, rather than just they're allowed to nothing happens. You know what I mean? Because some people do, like, that's not a punishment really at all, and some people.
I don't even see like. So I respect punishment in the sense of like punishment for rehabilitation, or punishment for, but also separates like. But I don't even for like a second, I don't want punishment for punishment.
Oh, punishment. You've done something wrong, so yeah.
Because you know what it says to me, like, it's like we have words like murderer, paedophile, this like thug, druggie, all these words, and it's just a way for us to be like entitled and like separate ourselves and be like, they're criminals and we're good people, and like that's what should happen to these types of people. But I feel like it's kind of ignorant of the fact that we're all just people in different circumstances. Like, as I say, like, someone doing something to my kid, I'm suddenly now a murderer because that's what I would do.
I agree. I was thinking that maybe a punishment could be like watching. You have to like watch the like victim's family, like do you know what I mean? You have to actually see what pain you've caused.
The whole remorse thing.
Yeah, you're allowed to and then you can actually see whether they're regretful or not. If they're watching at the victim's family like crying and, you know what I mean, like really big out, and then they're just like, I don't care, then they're obviously insane.
Yeah, so this is it. But you say insane, right? So I think sometimes it comes down to like a mental thing, like whether it's worldview, whether it's like mental diagnoses, whether it's like whatever. Maybe they're disenfranchised and they feel like they have that separation themselves from an earlier age. Like, I'm always going to be a criminal, whatever it is, it's mental. So like, you know, so for example, in the situation you gave with families, a lot of people find healing, like there's loads of stories of the families like befriending the prisoner, and like especially when the prisoner's like young, and then they have a relationship with them, and then they both heal from that. Do you know what I mean? Whereas like if it's just, you're an evil animal, look what you did to my boy, like blah blah blah, I think that's not good for either of them, because like the mum, let's say, of the kid who got hit by a car or something, is never gonna heal from that, and the guy is never gonna forgive himself, and was always gonna see himself as a murderer.
There's a difference between like an 18-year-old stabbing someone and then Ted Bundy.
Yeah, so like obviously, so you can give examples like you've just given of like the most kind of, especially with premeditated murders and serial killing and things like that. What do you do with them in my thing? So for me, like, as I say, I think everybody's redeemable, but you might take a Ted Bundy and be like, he would take 50 years and 10 therapists and X, Y, and Z just to change his like worldview. So I'm saying, like, obviously maybe that's certain people, it's not worth it, let's say.
Yeah.
Or it's not like, we don't want to live in it, like, you have to understand that court of public opinion is never gonna want the best of these guys. So then you go into my system of like, so I think it can be multifaceted, right? You could have like forced entry into the military. You could have would you want
working with Ted Bundy in the army?
Maybe not Ted Bundy, but like, I'm just saying, like, in this thing of like not being rehabilitated, you could have this one's a controversial one. I'd like to get your opinion on it, which is like not necessarily deportation, but like, well, deportation, for example, if you're illegally in the country, X, Y, and Z. But like, let's say the Congo, let's tie these two things in, want
Or like
want
slave labourers.
not slave labor, but like they want people who are maybe like trained or educated or whatever, in whatever country it might be, and they have like their own schemes there for them where they feel like they can train them up to contribute, whether that's maybe like not slave labor in the same, we'd obviously want the same conditions that they have, but like whether that's more manual jobs or whatever it is. Like country might say like, oh, we make our money through basically bringing in prisoners who are contracted to, let's say, work for us for this amount of time. Like in, obviously, was that to a degree what happened in Australia?
Yeah, no, they just sent all the prisoners
Or
to.
they sent them away.
Yeah.
So okay, yeah, just pause me on that point then. What do you think about like exporting your prisoners?
Yeah, if the country that you're exporting to are happy to have them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and not just like throw them and be like, okay, they're your problem now. No.
Yeah. Okay, so there's that, and then there's so I say live in the system where like, so like private prisons in America, you might be making, I don't know, like shoes, and then the corporation that owns the shoes will pay the prison some money, they get money, blah blah blah. So like that, for example, like you have a job in there, it's a shit job, whatever, but you have a job and you make money and you whatever, or the whole, so that could be 10 buddy, he can make shoes the rest of his life, or if he doesn't want to do that because he's like, I'm above that, then he can have euthanasia.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I agree that it's ridiculous. Something like that. When the story of the boy, no, the man who got the death penalty recently, Kim Kardashian was like advocating for him to not get, because when he was 18, he was involved in a gang, and then one of the people killed a couple, and then he was tasked to set the bodies on fire. That's what happened. As in the dead bodies, to like get rid of the evidence. That's what his task was, and he got life in prison, and then the death penalty.
I've got a more fun one than that for you. So the other day we were watching this show on Netflix. Have you heard of it? It's like I Am a Murderer or something.
Possibly.
Maybe no.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the stories, it was, I'm not trying to remember. So it was this guy went to maybe another state where he had, I don't know if it was like distant family members or whatever it was, but basically it was 3 young Latina boys or Latinx boys, and they were like, one of the boys was quite, his dad was a judge, was quite rich, and so they had money for like coke, and they had like an outhouse, kind of like, anyway, like an outhouse anyway, so they're doing coke, and then basically one of them he was like, I don't want to have to rely on this guy like for coke, whatever, let's just do our own, let's get our own money and we'll do it ourselves, which doesn't make any fucking sense to me, because like he feels too proud to have a handout from somebody, so thinks he's going to steal from someone else. Anyway, so they go to this guy's house, they go like to this, one of the guys there's like, oh, I know this great house to like steal, the guy's never in. So they go to the house, and it turns out that the owner of the house is a priest who's like kiddie fiddling, and that's why the guy wanted to go there, because when he was homeless, he used to stay there. I know there's a lot of guys in this story.
Yeah.
So like, this is the rich kid. He dropped them off. He didn't come. This is the guy got kiddie fiddle who's just to go into the house, right? And this is the third one. The third one is like, unbeknownst to everyone, a Satanist now. And I think because he's coked up and he also hallucinogens earlier in the day, he thinks he hears Satan. So like, they're gonna leave because they can't. The guy's still in the house and they can't like rob him.
Yeah.
He's like, no, Satan wants their bodies. So they go in, and he like, the crazy Satanist one now like stabs the shit out of this guy on the couch, and then the other guy like doesn't really want to join in, but he like is encouraged to, so he like stabs him after he's already been like fucked up. And then the Satanist guy goes and kills 2 more people and like turns a crucifix up and down, all this crazy shit, right? And the guy didn't really want to do that. I think he was like, went out to be sick, like he was scared, obviously. The second guy, the guy who wanted to get revenge on the priest. So the crazy Satanist guy took a plea deal and got 40 years in prison, but the guy who just stabbed the guy who was already dying once didn't, went to court, lost, and now he's on death row, even though he stabbed an already dying body. So like, my thing was like, he clearly wasn't comfortable with what was going on.
And didn't the priest touch him as a child?
The guy. Yes, I think that wasn't definitively proved. So yeah, he's in prison. Like, and you hear the interview of this guy as well, and the guy who's like Satanist was kind of just very matter of fact about it. Like, this is what I did. I heard the devil. These are drugs I was on. like completely calm about it. Like, this is what I did, basically. And the other guy is very much like, there are circumstances that weren't like complicated and sounded like he was trying to better himself. Obviously, he's screwed, and every single time his parole comes up, they reject it because of the whole like story, basically, that they went in and they like it was satanic and they killed all these guys.
They only
But
killed
he's on death row.
a priest.
He killed like half a person, basically, because the guy was already dying. So for me, like, that guy's definitely, like, even though the whole story sounds fucked, the guy's definitely redeemable, right?
100%. I don't even think it sounds fucked. He killed the evil priest, like, but he didn't have to stab him at all.
He didn't know, like, I'm not saying that's like slap on the wrist, but I feel like that's obviously something where it's like, oh, he needs therapy. He needs.
What happened to
like,
the third guy?
The third guy's dad was a judge, so like everyone put it down to the fact that his dad was a judge. But basically, his involvement, he gave them the weapons because they said they were just going to steal, and obviously he cooked them up, and he dropped them off. So, but he got away, basically, got off because he didn't have anything to do. He didn't even step foot in the house. So he pretty much just got off. And I think, what was it? Maybe he was at maybe it was because he was at a certain age or whatever where it was quite complicated to get him involved as part of it. But yeah, I think he's pretty much just like absolutely fine. So yeah, that's like an example of like, I think where like, I think on the face of it, if you're let's say like those kids were more homeless kids, their priest was helping out on the couches and stuff, and you're the parent of those kids, you're like, he deserves like to die, he deserves this. But like for me, like separate from that emotion, which we can be as like neutral people or policymakers, whatever, he is redeemable, surely. Like, he obviously had he was on drugs, he was abused, he obviously had remorse in the actual act by throwing up and like not wanting to take part in the other killings. Like, even based off of that, how is he on death row and the other guy isn't, just because of how the legal system works, you know?
Wait, there were more deaths, but more people died?
Yeah, so basically they killed the first guy, and he went on to kill the third guy. The satanist guy was like, oh, don't worry, like, you can stay outside if you want, I'm gonna kill more. And yeah, he killed 2 more, including the priest.
My god.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy. It was like, there was another one, like the front cover is this woman that says like, I'm a murderer, and it's this like old like woman that's like kind of haggard. And I remember seeing in the news somewhere like the first woman who was ever actually put to death on the death penalty was like, tried to get it overturned last week, I think it was, didn't, and ended up dying, which I thought was absolutely crazy. There's only ever been one woman, I think presumably in America, or maybe it was just in the state, that's ever been put to death. I think that's definitely one of the biggest things on like the side of, I don't know, meninist, whatever you want to call them, like unfair treatment of men. That women get such easier sentences. Like, how has no woman ever got sentenced to death before? Mad.
No idea.
But yeah, her story was really fucked as well. She like basically made up a story where like she was being abused and her daughter was being abused. But let me tell you more to the story. We won't spoil another episode of this series for the viewers, but there was more to the story.
Sorry.
Huh?
Sorry, guys, we're spoiling.
Oh, sorry, yeah, spoiling one. So I just went down a massive rabbit hole there, but yeah, so I think it's pretty crazy, but we should be happy that we live in this country because at least we've got some actual sensible systems that work.
Could be improved, but still work.
How would you improve it?
Don't know.
I mean, I guess it's a very complicated question.
I'm not really sure, actually. How many days? I don't know. I don't really agree with keeping them in cells, like, all the time. So like, more outside involved, just like being outside more, having more. I don't know. It's just like disgusting. Like, it's literally caging people up.
Yeah. So I think in some of the Nordic ones I was looking at, they literally don't even have cells. They have dorms, and then they're like completely free to roam around the whole like site and everything like that.
What I was going to say is I don't think that white collar prison should exist.
What do you think should happen instead? This is an interesting one.
Yeah, this was my take on it. They should like try and pay back as much money as if they've stolen or whatever, if they've you know what I mean, like pyramid scheme,
embezzle tax, yeah.
embezzled tax, they should be allowed to like do what they want, but they should attempt to pay the money back rather than what's going to prison gonna do?
Yeah.
Like absolutely nothing. It's not like they're really bad people.
Yeah.
I mean, tax evading is an average Joe thing. Just some people get caught and most people don't.
Well, apparently, I was looking this up as well because they split prisons in America, for example, up into federal and what's the type of crime? Well, basically, the federal ones, I think that's what white collar crime comes under, and it's only 10% of the people. And like they've actually got, I don't know because like, obviously like, you can have more like violent federal crimes, but I think those systems aren't as messed up in terms of like people only becoming worse and just getting stuck in there. But okay, so if someone's a millionaire, right?
Yeah.
And then they're using loopholes to avoid paying tax, whatever it might be, and they know like, oh, okay, I'm gonna take this one risky option and it'll save me $250,000 in the long run. But I know if I get caught, all I have to do is pay back that $250,000, which I can afford to do. And there's a very small chance I'll get caught because whatever.
But like,
surely they're just going to be like, they're just going to weigh it up as like a financial decision.
And you should have to, I don't know how they can find out who money was taken to who, but like you shouldn't be able to like get that. You lose your job, like you can't go around having the same job. Like, otherwise, yeah, you would just commit the crime and nothing would happen. You'd just lose the money.
Right.
So I think like
I think again, but like if we're talking about millionaires, how often are they employees? They're mostly own things where they can.
Yeah, then they have to step down and their money is taken away.
Maybe you should cap the amount they can own.
Yeah, no, 100%. Their money is
taken. Imagine you could do that. No, like the amount that they can earn in the future. Like, it's capped.
Oh yeah, 100%. They can't get another job like that again.
No, because don't forget, like what I'm trying to say is they're not necessarily in job most of the time. It's just like their own capital that they invest with and do their own businesses and stuff like that. It's not a job where it's like they're employed or whatever it is. So maybe if you just capped like, let's say they're a multimillionaire, you cap them at like 40 grand a week, which again is like not a week, sorry, a year, which is obviously low still. But it's like even if you make this like risk, not only will it affect you in this one like transaction, then you can't be rich ever again. Yeah. That'd be good. But then.
And then the money just goes back to the government and given to other people.
Then you've got less taxes. So let's say like after prison they learn their lesson and they go on to like still earn millions and they'll be paying way more in taxes. And if you cap them, that's a problem. Or maybe you could do like instead of capping them.
No,
50% of their money.
I said when I was talking about it to Mum, I was saying they should have to do community service.
Yeah.
Rather than prison, so community service, like I don't know, maybe one day a week for the rest of their life, or like something where
they should have to like teach a class on the consequences of I don't know, tax evasion or fraud and the people it affects or something.
Yeah, 100%. And they should have to like look at videos and stuff.
Give a presentation.
People who have been stolen from and how it affects them. Yeah, I scrap everything I said before about not.
No, I think one thing you could do is you could say like you only get 50% of your income. So like that way they still have a massive incentive to earn a lot of money. Because so let's say they want to at least be on the 40k that I talked about before, they'd have to be earning 80k, and then like the other 50% will go as taxes. So you basically just like tax the shit out of them for the rest of their lives. So either they can't earn very much at all, or they've got to pay loads in tax.
Maybe like more like 60% tax or something, not 50, because it's already
60% tax. Oh yeah, true. It's already loads, isn't it?
Exactly.
Tax.
Yeah.
Tax. Well,
I'm Christian.
Oh, I saw that on, was it like Instagram or something?
When he said that I'm a conservative, why are you conservative? I want to pay less tax.
Got indoctrinated early.
I don't know. That's our little brother. He's a little Tory.
Yeah, he already says things to me like, I don't want to be happy, I just want to be rich. He's 13, 14. 14? Yeah.
Yeah, he'll change.
Yeah, I hope. I hope he does. Like, no, there's no point in money if you're not happy. Nope, just want to be rich. I'll sell my soul. So hopefully, yeah, he'll figure out there's more to life than being rich. But we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll have to see. Right. So I guess we're coming up to the end of the hour. Is there anything else that you had thoughts? How's your week looking?
How's my week been? Kind of bad actually.
Tell the
No,
viewers.
it's good but bad. Yesterday, basically, I had this like, it's not a keloid, but it's a bit like a keloid. It's called like hypergranulation tissue, right?
You might want to explain what and where that is. Just
Yeah. So I have belly button piercing, and it's like a little red thing on my belly button piercing.
Oh, I thought you meant your ear piercing.
No. I do have a keloid on my ear, but like that's fine. I don't care because the earring's out.
Sorry.
But on my belly button piercing, the piercing's still in, and it's just like annoying. It doesn't really hurt, but it was annoying, right? And so I tried to get rid of it using steroid cream, tea tree oil, loads of stuff. Didn't work. So then silly me decided to cauterize it myself with silver nitrate.
What? Who convinced you to do that?
It's just like a thing that people do. It's like people get rid of their own warts, right?
Yes, I think people do. Burn their skin.
Yeah. So silly me didn't put Vaseline everywhere, and so I've now got like secondary burns on my belly button.
What? It's really bad. In terms of,
it's not really bad, and I did it. I did it again, but this time I put Vaseline everywhere, and so it was fine. I think it's actually worked. I think so. If you want to at-home cauterization,
I think clearly the lesson from what you've just said is see a doctor. Don't burn off your own skin for obvious reasons.
But yeah, that was quite annoying, but it will heal. So.
Well, yeah, please don't burn yourself again.
What else?
Yeah, then that's. And what was the upside to that? Oh, that it's gone. That was the upside.
I think I did it again today, and it looks like it's just like flat and like healed. No, not healed, but like the tissue's gone. But we'll have to wait and see till we'll see tomorrow.
Yeah.
The burns. So yeah, I don't recommend it doing at home. But you know what? You can't go to the fucking doctor nowadays, so.
True. But yeah, maybe it's worth the wait. They should honestly
just give pharmacists more like responsibility.
Well, they do a completely different thing though. Degree that they do pharmacy as opposed to medicine. So like they have a similar level of knowledge in terms of medication, but that's obviously completely different to treatments in terms of like surgical.
You have to administer the medication, so why couldn't they have just administered the medication on me?
Maybe they should just all like, yeah, I don't know. But I feel like everybody who could be useful for that kind of level of thing is already being used for COVID, like nurses, for example. So it'd probably be the same situation.
Yeah, it's annoying.
Yeah. Speaking about COVID, a nice note to end on. I was like hearing loads of fear-mongering stuff in the last couple of weeks about we're gonna be living with this for even longer and potential 30% more deadliness from this current virus on top of the 67% more contagion, X, Y, and Z, blah blah blah. But I saw it yesterday. Apparently, the government are seriously considering reducing restrictions before mid-February now.
Yeah.
So, well, again, that's not gospel. That's, as I say, like every other day it's something completely different to that. But yeah, so maybe that's just gonna be like with schools and things, stuff that's struggling right now. But yeah, so hopefully, if you've heard loads of bad rumors and you think, oh, I'm gonna be here till 2022, hopefully it's not gonna be, because I think it was 78% of the over 80s have been vaccinated now, or something like that. So they are working their way through. It was how many of millions of people are vaccinated, so we're getting there.
Like throughout all this time that they've been vaccinating the like old people, they've also been vaccinating all the nurses and stuff like that.
Teachers as well.
Medical professionals who have been getting vaccines. So
yeah, there was there's a thing to maybe say, like, which is quite left field, which is to say, so so basically footballers get tested like twice a week now, 2-3 times a week. And the reason apparently why football's going, so like one thing is like morale, but the other big thing is apparently the amount they pay in tax from it just running is massive. And obviously smaller clubs are like small businesses basically, and they'd go down. And yeah, basically for the sake of like how many people on the field, and there's no people in the stadium, nowhere near them, it's worth having it on for all those reasons. But apparently there's something like people basically saying like, instead of spending all the money on like testing every single division player every week twice, give them vaccines and then use that money to back into NHS to like fund, for example, getting more vaccines and like just paying staff X, Y, and Z, all the things that they need money for. What do you think about that? Like, obviously, in the meantime, certain people won't get the vaccine, but it might be better like financially.
Possibly, but I mean, I don't think they should be choosing footballers over vulnerable people.
But again, it's like, so like, did you see the stuff
maybe
today about the EU?
Maybe do the footballers after all the vulnerable people have been, and like all the over like maybe 70s have been vaccinated.
So like in the 50s month, which I think is like March.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, because I saw today that apparently the EU. I don't know if this is just something like to fearmonger because of Brexit or whatever, but apparently there's gonna be some sort of supply chain issue with some of the vaccines because of like, I don't know, tariffs or whatever from the EU now. So I don't know what that's down to, if that's down to money or like something that hasn't been negotiated yet or whatever, but things like money could start to become more and more of a thing in this.
That ain't good.
No. But let's have some nice positive words of affirmation for the viewers who are locked down. It's going to be okay.
Don't worry, everyone.
Impermanence is the only consistent in life.
Take the time to grow, love yourself, learn about yourself. Appreciate the people who are with you right now.
Yeah.
Appreciate the people who are looking out for you because they're your ride or dies.
Exactly. And maybe when it's not snowing as much, but go for a walk. Get out there, get some fresh air still.
Or better, go for a walk in the snow. Play in the snow. It's fun.
Play in the snow, yeah. I saw I was like, it just went crazy snowy overnight here, and I went from like nothing to like thick sheets. And I saw this mum and daughter like snowball fighting on the stairs, which was really cute, but also like it was like stone steps. I was like, I hope they do not.
Oh my god.
Right, so grit the front of your houses or the pavements wherever you're playing, but then play. Make some snowmen. Yeah. Okay. Well, I hope that's been positive, and I hope you were interested by our very very heavy topics today. And next week or the week after, we're probably going to look to bring on a guest. So I say we'll be doing segments of interviewing, bringing on special guests, and they'll talk about a specific niche there. So hopefully we'll bring that to you soon. And for now, this has been the
Debrief. We're gonna have to work on that because I don't know. Did you
These cues have been thrown in today, so I guess I don't know. Are they working? Maybe.
This episode was brought to you by Louise and Jeremy because we're not sponsored.
Yet, but if you'd like to sponsor us, please email us. We'll give you an email when we make one next week. Okay, there's some things we need to work out, but hopefully you've enjoyed today's, and we'll look forward to keep bringing this to you every week. Okay, bye.
Bye.